Now, anti-abuse advocacy groups say the social protection system failed baby Daniel, and now it's failing his siblings too. Baby Daniel died in 2016 after sustaining blunt force injuries to his body. He had been submerged in boiling water and had 60% burn wounds. Earlier this month, Daniel's killer, Timothy Naidoo, was given a life term. He was the partner of Daniel's mother, Mary Vermaak, who was also given 20 years behind bars, and that was quite a big judgment, with the judge saying that she lied to social workers and failed to protect her children. Now, at the request of a social worker, the court has granted weekend visitation rights to a grandmother who, according to the court record, raised her own children in an abusive environment. So what is happening in our system to protect children? Well, to discuss, we're joined by social worker Talia-Jade Magnes with Babies Matter. Thank you for being with us,
Thank
Talia.
you for having me, Francis.
It's such a horrible story. If we go back to baby Daniel's, so the stepfather was accused of the murder and found guilty, but you believe that social workers in the system actually contributed to murder. How?
Unfortunately so. I think that the blood of baby Daniel is not just on his mother and his stepfather's hands. It's on the entire child protection system. It is on the social workers of the hospital who took 7 weeks to refer his case to a statutory organization. The hospital.
So let's start there. A doctor noticed signs of abuse.
Yes. So a doctor noticed signs of abuse and made the referral to the social work organization, the social work department at that state hospital. That social work department then took 7 weeks to refer the case to an external statutory organization, upon which time baby Daniel was sent home, so he was continued to be tortured, he continued to be abused, waiting for somebody to come and do something and to help him. Once that case was referred to the statutory organisation, MES, a social worker then over the phone, contacted the abusers, contacted the stepfather to find out, is everything okay at home? Which obviously he's going to say, yeah, everything's fine, we're great, which he did. And the social worker then left the case and never did a home visit, never came back, never did her investigation, and about 5 weeks after that, baby Daniel was murdered. So if any of those social workers at any point had done their job, he would actually still be alive.
And now, even more alarmingly, one of those social workers apparently allowing the grandmother visitation rights.
Yes.
First, tell me why you have a problem with the grandmother.
So, I mean, you need to look at where this biological mother of this child was raised. She was raised by the grandmother. With all due respect, I mean, people can, they can make mistakes, and 20 or 30 years later, they can then do the right thing. But as part of the sentencing for the mother and the stepfather, pre-sentencing reports were submitted to court. And in the pre-sentencing report for the mother, there was a clear family history of the grandmother and a clear investigation of the family and of the type of mother or parental figure she is and was to her child. And this social worker from MES, he never had the reports, he never appeared at the High Court, he was never a part of the evidence. He has absolutely no idea anything about this family. He has absolutely no idea the ins and outs of any of the evidence of how baby Daniel was murdered, of nothing. He goes to the children's court, which is unfortunately a separate procedure, because the two, they run completely separately from one another. And he's going to the children's court and saying that these children should have visitation and should be reunified with this family, when he knows absolutely nothing about them.
Do you think it's a danger for these two, because these are young kids now, baby Daniel's brother and sister, to be with the grandmother?
So we do think, I think that it is a danger, and even more so, it has become evident that he hasn't even investigated their circumstances. So he managed to get it through court that these children must go for visitation and should have full weekend visitation with this maternal grandmother from Friday till Sunday afternoon. And then this last weekend, the grandmother, it was supposed to be their first visit, and the maternal grandmother arrives at the children's home where the children are placed to fetch them. And the youngest child is going completely crazy. She's crying, she doesn't want to go with her, she doesn't want to get in the car. So the manager at the children's home phones the social work supervisor at Mayor's to say, like, what must I do? Must I force the child to go with them? And she says, what are you talking about? This visitation, why is it continuing? The social worker hasn't done his investigation.
Yeah.
He hasn't done a home visit.
A supervisor of the social worker.
Of the social worker.
Yeah.
Hasn't done his home visit and doesn't know where they live.
Incredible.
So he doesn't even know whether or not they are
Yeah.
safe because he hasn't even done his investigation.
Okay, so you are opposing this in court, I understand.
Yes.
But I don't want to get into the legal technicalities because we're running out of time. I want to know, firstly, is this a problem with social workers generally? Are we talking about government social workers, private social workers? These are the people meant to be looking after children.
Unfortunately, Francis, the entire child protection system is an absolute mess. It's completely broken. It's from the department to private NGOs and the thing is that yes, social workers are their caseloads are very high and they're under-resourced, but they are tasked with the mandate to look after children, and very often they don't. There are numerous cases just like baby Daniel's.
I mean,
it just
if someone
happens that we've
picks
honed in
up
on
the
this one.
phone, it's alarming what you're saying. Picking
Yeah.
up the phone, is your baby okay? When those parents are suspected of
Absolutely.
hurting that baby grievously.
Absolutely.
And you're saying that's rife. What's the fix? Court cases, negligence cases?
So what we would like to see happen is that social workers are held accountable, that they're prosecuted, that they go to jail, that they are held accountable. It's not just, oops, I'm under-resourced. Oh no, it was another case that went by. I mean, I'm a social worker. I used to work as a statutory social worker, so I know the ins and outs of the system. I know how hard it is, but it's not good enough. If you are a social worker and there are children at the end of your line who you are supposed to protect, you have to protect them. And if you can't, you shouldn't be doing your job.
There's another issue here that grandmothers always sound like good people,
Yes.
but they're not always.
No.
Grannies are not always good. And there seems to be a bent in the courts to reunify children with families if there's been a problem, to try and do that. Is that a good policy overall?
I think it can be a good policy. I mean, families, to have children with families is great, but provided they are screened and provided they are going to be able to care for the children, we also need to look at where these parents who are abusing and murdering their children came from. They didn't fall from nowhere. They came from these grandparents. So we need to take that into account. And if you look at adoption, we screen couples for adoption for months and months and months. It can take more than a year for an adoption to go through. But when it's foster care, we just want to move them along, move them out the system. Oh, there's family, it's blood, it's more important than anything else.
Yeah.
The screening is nothing when you're a foster parent. It's completely different and it's not acceptable.
All right, it's not, and there's some big issues here. Hopefully we'll chat again. Thank you very much.
that'd be great.
Concerned about the safety of the siblings of baby Daniel. That was a horrific case, and taking that to court, social worker Talia-Jade Magnes from Babies Matter.